Okay, ya ikhwat al-kiram, we're moving along, insha'Allah ta'ala. We're going to talk a little bit about difference of opinion. Okay, the Prophet ﷺ, he told a group of Sahaba during the battle of Ahzab, he said to them, لا يصلين أحد العصر إلا في بني قريظة. He said to them, none of you pray Asr except in Bani Qurayza. Now look, notice. All right, I don't want to give anything away or influence you and your answer in any way, but look, these are not just any simple words of our Prophet. He says, لا يصلين, right, which is tawqeed. He's emphasizing the statement. أحد العصر إلا في بني قريظة. Right, and by the way, those who took Surah Al-Asr with us, right, this is al-istithna. So the Prophet ﷺ saying no except in one situation. But just telling you the general features of the statement of our Prophet ﷺ. What is he telling the Sahaba? Don't pray unless you get to Bani Qurayza. The Sahaba Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim, on the way to Bani Qurayza, it got late. And Salat al-Maghrib is kicking in. And the Sahaba Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim were split. They were split because some of them were saying the explicit words of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam were this: do not pray Asr except in Bani Qurayza. We are not going to pray Asr unless we get to Bani Qurayza. And the other half said differently. You guys tell me, what would you do in this situation if you're one of the ashab of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam? Yes. Pray or no pray, and tell me why. Make it short.
Okay. I would pray before Salat al-Maghrib.
You would pray. Why?
Sabab dhalik is because Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in this hadith is emphasizing that like إنه استعجلوا إلى بني قريظة ولكن إنه
Quick حبيبي. يلا.
استعجل إلى بني قريظة ولكن يعني إنه it's just an emphasis يعني get there as fast as you can, but like obviously do not miss the salat.
So what does that mean? Many words.
Pray Salat al-Asr, but يعني hurry to Bani Qurayza.
Any clarification? Yes, Muhammad.
I think what he's trying to say, and I agree with him on this, is that you pray Asr because the Prophet he says, none of you pray Asr except in Bani Qurayza. He's trying to say, get there as quickly as possible.
Okay, so he's trying to say get there as quickly as possible, right? So he's trying to say get there ASAP. Anybody else believe otherwise or feel otherwise if you were in this situation? Yes, Usama.
Honestly, it's a very clear-cut statement, so I would probably not pray.
Clear-cut statement.
And we have the excuse. Even if we miss Asr, the Prophet ﷺ told us clearly, so we have the excuse.
Okay, maybe they even have the excuse though. Right? Yes. Yes.
I would go otherwise. I'd pray the Asr before because Allah said,
Excellent. Okay. Ayah of the Quran that says to pray on time. Okay. Have you ever prayed? Have you ever combined prayers when you're traveling? Actually, you taught me this as a child. MashaAllah. Yes. Otherwise, yes. Hassan.
I'd say that you would not pray until you get there.
Why?
Because it was an order from the Prophet.
Okay.
Of course, the Prophet wouldn't say it like that. So I'd say in that case, then you should not pray until you.
Anything else? Jazakallah khair. Anything else? Yes.
Wouldn't this, because they're traveling, wouldn't this fall under the situation you could combine?
You can combine Asr and Maghrib, right? You can only combine Dhuhr and Asr. Maghrib, Isha, you can combine Asr and Maghrib. Anything else? Yes.
I would pray in Bani Qurayza because there may be an exception that I don't know about. The Prophet knows that may tell me later.
Maybe an exception about. Okay, Jazakumullah khair. This is excellent. This is exactly what happened to the Sahaba. The Sahaba were split. Some of them felt, no, we are going to pray Asr. And the second half of the Sahaba, they're like, no, The Prophet ﷺ, exactly what you mentioned, it's a clear-cut statement, it's an order, perhaps an exception, we don't know. The Prophet said, لا يصلين أحد العصر إلا في بني قريظة. Do not pray unless you get to Bani Qurayza. So they did that, they were split, subhanallah. They come back to the Prophet ﷺ and they explain the situation, and our Prophet ﷺ, what did he say? Which one did he say was correct? Which one did he say was correct? What did he say? What did he say? Yes. What did he, nope, what did he say? He did not say anything. The Prophet ﷺ remained silent. Of course, look, when there's differences of opinion, one has to be correct. Right? It's wrong to actually say that these differences of opinion mean that they're all correct. That doesn't make logical sense. But with the Prophet ﷺ, when he was remained silent, each opinion is valid to follow. You have exerted, based off of your knowledge, based off of the mujtahid's knowledge. What is a mujtahid? A mujtahid is a person that has reached a level of knowledge and is able to derive and deduce rulings. Right? This is what a mujtahid is, and the Sahaba were mujtahideen by default because they understood the language and they were with the Prophet ﷺ. Right? So they were deriving knowledge and yet they differed, and one technically عند الله تعالى will know on Yawm al-Qiyamah perhaps which one is correct. But both are valid to follow. This in a very small nutshell, are the differences that happen between the four madhahib. The mujtahidun, Al-Imam Ahmad, Al-Imam Shafi'i, Imam Malik, Al-Imam Abu Hanifa and others, they would do this ijtihad, right? This is not just for anybody, not for Muhammad Sabal to do ijtihad or Lu'ay or Usama or myself or Harith, right? This is for the mujtahidun. Now, ya ikhwat al-kiram, I'm going to explain another point here. Okay, my circles are not great as those who came to class new, and my lines probably will not be great. But let's try Bismillah. Pretend it's a straight line, it's not the best. Okay, ya ikhwat al-kiram, we have something, let's call this the spectrum of, I'd say, belief, maybe knowledge. Okay, at the very tail end, you have something that you call yaqeen. You have something called yaqeen. Yaqeen means something that you have absolute certainty about. And that knowledge can come from various different places. For example, it can come from your rationale, right? We all know for a fact. I'm going to put examples on the bottom. 2 + 2 = 4. Can there be any difference of opinion? There can't be a difference of opinion. This is something we know, it's certainty. Another example of certainty is that Hamza is up in front of the board right now, teaching. You see it with your eyes. You have zero doubt that I am Hamza and I'm teaching up on the board. That's an example. That's an example of something that you have certainty about. Another example is Allah Ta'ala is a creator of the universe. Allah Ta'ala has to be the creator of the universe. We have yaqeen in that. How do we derive that? How do we derive this knowledge? How do we derive this knowledge?
From observing.
But where does it come from? Yes?
Logic.
Our rationale and our logic. Yes, the Quran as well, but also from our rationale. What's something else? Let me ask you guys a question. How many people here have been to Uganda? The country Uganda? Nobody? Not a single person has been to Uganda. How many people, and raise your hand, how many people believe that Uganda exists? Not a single person doubts that Uganda exists. Not a single person. How do you know Uganda exists? You've never even been there. How do you know Uganda exists and you've never even been there and you have certainty? You're telling me you have yaqeen. And the reason is because so many people across so many generations have spoken and told you that Uganda exists, that you now have certainty in your heart that Uganda exists. What's something similar to that is the Quran. I'm going to put Uganda. And then you have something called, and then you have the Quran, for example. The Quran, we know, came from the Prophet ﷺ, who took it from Jibreel, who took it from Allah Ta'ala. But we know it came from the Prophet ﷺ because so many people So many people across different generations were passing on the Quran. Okay? So the Quran is like the Uganda. It gives us what we call yaqeen, that it truly came from the Prophet ﷺ. This stuff here, ya ikhwatul kiram, nobody differs with. Whatever it is, whatever the mas'ala is, okay, we pray and when we do ruku', we go like this and we don't go backwards when you do ruku'. That is what we call ijma'. Things on this spectrum, no madhab, no person disagrees with. Nobody disagrees with that stuff. So it doesn't matter what madhab you follow, where there is yaqiniyat, where there is certainty about something, nobody will disagree with. Now, ya ikhwatil kiram, we have then something a little bit less than yaqeen. We have something that you might call who can translate this for me? غَلَبَةُ الظَّنِّ. Who can give me a good translation? I didn't think of a great translation. غَلَبَةُ الظَّنِّ. Highly likely possibility. All right. غَلَبَةُ الظَّنِّ is that you have overwhelming confidence, but you don't have yaqeen. Overwhelming confidence, but what do you not have? You do not have certainty. Now this right here, ya ikhwa, is where ijtihad comes from. This is where ijtihad falls. This is where you have difference of opinion. What is actually giving me ghalabat al-dhan as a mujtahid, as Abu Hanifa or Malik or Shafi'i, what is giving me ghalabat al-dhan? And anything that gives me ghalabat al-dhan or overwhelming confidence that this is what the ayah means or this is what the Prophet ﷺ said, etc., equals legislation. Equals legislation. Something that is right in the middle is something called dhann. You have a belief, you kind of feel that it could be true, but it might not be true. It's like 50-50. 50-50. And then you have something that is lower than 50-50, which is something called shak. You have doubt. It's in this area that we are not obliged, and nor should we actually follow it and make it part of legislation. When I say we, I'm talking about the mujtahid. Not part of legislation. Sorry? This one?
Yeah.
This is shak.
Doubt, okay.
Doubt. And then there's dhann. And then you have on the opposite side of the spectrum, this kind of splits into two here. You call it, I'm just going to do it for, it's not necessary for us to really get into, but you have jahl. Anybody know? You have jahl basit. Jahl basit means when a person is ignorant, has no idea, but they recognize they have no idea. But then you have another type of jahl, which is actually very widespread. Jahl, not ghalidh, but jahl murakkab. And jahl murakkab is when the jahil thinks he knows, but he doesn't know. He doesn't know what he's talking about, but he acts like he has yaqeen and he has ghalabat al-dhann and he has the tools of ijtihad and he can do whatever he wants to do, but he actually has no idea what he's talking about. So like I said, ya ikhwatil kiram, this is what the debate is. What is actually legislation? What is actually legislation? And whatever is actually legislation, I must have, the mujtahid must feel overwhelming confidence, feeling like it's a highly likely possibility. This is what was intended by the ayah of the Quran. This was intended by the words of the Prophet ﷺ, or this is what was truly said by the Prophet ﷺ, or it's not. Now, ya ikhwati al-kiram, we went into a major khilaf last week. We'll get into it a little bit more, right? And this is a major khilaf. When I say major khilaf, that means that there is very strong evidences on either side, right? This is what we call a major khilaf. And that was whether we do raf' al-yadayn when we go into ruku' or not. I'm going to go into ruku'. Do I raise my hands again and then go? Or do I simply just go down? No? Who said it? MashaAllah. No, yes, we do. It's a difference. Well, it's a difference of opinion. But why is it a difference of opinion? I'm going to ask you guys. Why is it a difference of opinion? Not the technicalities, based on the spectrum. Answer me based off of the spectrum. Yes?
Because both groups had overwhelming evidences and they felt that they were confident that this is what was intended by the Prophet ﷺ.
Yes, but I want something more specific. Yes?
But they didn't have yaqeen.
No, yaqeen, khalas. We said fiqh, majority of fiqh. If we had yaqeen, there's no difference of opinion. You can't disagree on yaqeen.
No, he said they don't have yaqeen.
They don't have yaqeen. But that's not, I need something more specific. More specific. Yes, Yazid.
Wasn't that there weren't that many examples of it?
I don't want the technicality. I want based on this spectrum. Yes, Bishr.
One side had one over the.
Almost exactly. That's exactly what I want. One side felt there was ghalabat al-dhann. One side felt that most likely we have overwhelming evidence that the Prophet raised his hands when he went into ruku'. We really feel it. Right? And then the other side said no. Whatever we're reading, whatever evidences you're giving, whatever you're trying to tell us to do, it does not give us ghalabat al-dhann, so therefore what? It's not part of legislation for us. Therefore, we're not going to raise our hands. Does that make sense? Does this make sense? Hold on one second. This is where the khilaf comes from. Don't get lost, right, in the weeds. Don't lose a forest for the trees. But this is what we're trying to argue. Now, ya ikhwat al-kiram, when it goes over the mas'ala again, I'm going to quickly go over it, bi'ithnillahi ta'ala, because I feel like maybe it wasn't very clear, or maybe just a second time around would help, right? Those who say that it doesn't give us ghalabat al-dhann, we feel like it might be a dhann, it might be shak, we kind of doubt, they are the madhab of Imam Abu Hanifa. Al-madhab al-Hanafi, they feel that whatever you're giving us, whatever's out there, we do not feel it suffices for us to have ghalabat al-dhann that the Prophet truly raised his hands. And their argument for it is that the narrations, for something the Prophet ﷺ did so much in his life, he prayed 5 times a day. And the narrations that go back to the Prophet ﷺ raising his hands are limited in number. You're telling us 4, 5, 6, 7, what? That's it? Narrations, I understand and I accept all these individuals within this chain of narration are thiqat, right? Thiqa thabit, they are reliable, but just something doesn't sit well with me. Something doesn't sit well with me. And that is, it does not make sense for something the Prophet ﷺ has done so much in his life, and we only have a few narrations. Therefore, I'm over here. We don't believe it's part of salah. That's their viewpoint. Who's convinced by that? Who has yaqeen? That is the truth. Who has yaqeen in that viewpoint? Yaqeen. You have ghalabat al-dhann. Okay. Look, these different opinions, like the Sahaba, right, who some prayed and some did not pray, it's subjective. Right? Not subjective to Muhammad Sabbal and Hamza and Ahid and Ja'far. Not you guys and not me. But it's subjective to the mujtahid. And likewise, this is also subjective. Now, our class opinion, and the opinion that we support, is that no, raising your hands is part of legislation because we have overwhelming confidence that the Prophet ﷺ raised his hands before he went to ruku'. Why is that? It's because we have multiple chains, but forget about these multiple chains. In fact, we have 10 Sahaba, 10 narration going back to 10 Sahaba who did it. But you know what? Let's put that aside. We'll just give you the best of them because they're not all the strongest narrations. But we have a few that are pristine, golden chains of narrations. And I'll tell you some of them. It's a narration of Muhammad bin Maslama, who we said thiqa, thabit, nobody disagrees in this individual. Who took it from who? Who took it from who, guys? Al-Imam Malik, Darul Hijrah. Who's going to doubt Al-Imam Malik? And who was Muhammad bin Maslama, by the way? The Shaykh of Bukhari, Muslim. Who took it from? Al-Imam Malik. Who took it from? His teacher, Az-Zuhri ibn Shihab. Who took it from who? Salim bin Abdullah. Who's going to doubt Salim bin Abdullah? Who took it from who? Ibn Umar. Who dares to disagree with Ibn Umar? Forget about doubt him. We're calling this a pristine chain of narration. We understand we don't have 100 to give you. Yes, it'd be nice if we all did, then we'd all be maybe closer to yaqeen and we can all just, live a good life and all just do the same thing. But you know what? This chain of narration suffices. And 2, 3 others that are pristine chains of narration, it is enough to give us غَلَبَةِ الظَّنِّ. We're going to say it's part of the prayer. And we respond to them as well. Our arguments, because look, this is what the schools are all about, right? They have a certain framework and they disagree and they argue their points and they receive points and they argue them. They say to the Hanafis, they say that look, there are certain things that happened that at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba, every one of them should have known, but they didn't necessarily know. Something that should have been a common knowledge for them. And that was, remember I mentioned the narration of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, who when the Sahaba went to her and asked, if a person's private part enters into the private part of a female, but he does not ejaculate, does it require ghusl or not? Shouldn't this be common knowledge to your Sahaba? And it sufficed for them to know that Aisha says, yes, you have to do ghusl. But what is the point here? The point is, they did not bother to ask Maymuna and Sauda and all the wives and ask Ibn Abbas and ask all the other scholars. They didn't, they sufficed with one. Because they believe that they are thiqa thabit. They are reliable transmitters. Likewise, yes, we don't have 20 chains in Bukhari and Muslim, but what we have is pristine. But then on top of that as well, we'll say to them, of course this goes back and forth. I'm giving you one perspective, they're going to come back with us with another 100 arguments. But we say to them as well, who's to say, oh Hanafiya, that the Sahaba would love to narrate? That's something you made up in your mind. The Sahaba did not love to transmit narrations. In fact, they feared Allah Ta'ala because of their transmissions. And when they knew that some of the Sahaba were transmitting, they let it go. And that is a fact. And that's our counter argument. When they say that, where's all these narrations? Right? We brought up the example last time, right? Hamza smashed his leg. Muhammad Sabad was not here. The only people here in this congregation went back to Windsor Locks was Lu'ay, and who was the other? Osama, and told Muhammad Sabad the news. Hamza smashed his leg as he was teaching the class. Right? Do you trust both of them? Please just say yes for the sake of this argument. You trust both Lu'ay and Osama. They're limited. That doesn't mean just because everybody in the class and everybody at Windsor Locks didn't come and tell you the news, that doesn't mean it did not happen. In fact, there could be another reason. Maybe they're sad. I hope you're sad that I smashed my leg. Maybe they just don't want to talk about it. And this is where this difference of opinion comes from. And this is a major difference of opinion. Yes, they have a viewpoint. And they're a strong viewpoint. Why was there not many? But we have our responses as well. Okay, ya ikhwati al-kiram, end of major khilaf. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Any questions? A mujtahid is a person that reaches a certain level of knowledge and a certain expertise in the sciences. So you have to have a certain expertise in language. You have to have a certain expertise in hadith sciences. You have to have a certain expertise in usul al-fiqh. In fiqh, you have to have a certain expertise. Once you get to this expertise, then that person is allowed to have an opinion, and then he backs it up, or she backs it up with evidence.
Okay, and you have to be accepted by all the scholars. You can't just do books just like that.
Yeah, generally speaking, through their books and through their works, they become notable.
They have to extract from the Quran Sunnah. They get to a level where
They get to a level of understanding of the Islamic sciences.